In this video, we will be replacing the rear brake pads and rotors in this 2019 Jeep Compass. To prep this vehicle, I have raised the rear of the vehicle slightly off the ground and supported it with a couple safety stands. And I have wheel chocks in front of the front tires. We will begin by pushing the start-stop button, navigating to our settings. Going down one screen, we can find our brakes menu. We want brake service. And yes, we would like to retract the parking brakes for our brake system service. And we can hear those parking brakes retracting. And at the end of the service, we do have directions to reset this system. And we can push that start-stop button one more time. We can then remove the wheel that we will be working on. We are doing the passenger side rear to start, and then we will move to the driver's side. Taking a look at our assembly, we can clearly see our brake rotor. Around that brake rotor, we have a caliper mounting bracket. Within that mounting bracket, we have our caliper. The caliper sits within that mounting bracket, and our brake pads sit within the caliper. Taking a look at the side of it, we have our brake bleed screw. We have our motor for the parking brake, and we have our brake line. And on the back side of that caliper setup, we have two caliper bolts. If we look at the back of this from underneath the vehicle, we have two caliper mounting bracket bolts as well. To aid in the removal, we will apply Amsoil metal protector to each of these bolts as well as that bleed screw. This is a penetrating oil that will help the removal process be a little bit easier. Prior to removing the caliper, I do want to attempt to loosen the brake bleed screw. We first want to remove the dust boot. I'm then going to place the shank of a drill bit into the bleed screw. This will help prevent it from collapsing as I loosen this. And this was a 1/8 inch drill bit. Using an 11 millimeter combination wrench, we can work that bleed screw loose. And then snug that back down. And I'll replace that dust boot just so I don't accidentally lose it. And although I believe this caliper bolt is a 13 millimeter, my 1/2 inch combination wrench fits much better. And if this just spins without making progress, we can add a 17 millimeter wrench to the corresponding nut to help hold that. And we can then use a standard head screwdriver to work off that caliper. And I will be supporting that caliper with a bungee cord to reduce strain on the brake lines. And with that caliper removed, our brake pads can clearly be seen, and we can work those out. And it is worth noting that the pad towards the inside of the vehicle, this is the one facing the fuel tank, has a wear indicator on it. We will need to keep this in mind during reassembly. And we are then left with our caliper mounting bracket to remove. And these are held on by 17 millimeter bolts. And that top one, I will have to use a socket to get on that, as there is not enough room for a combination wrench. And on that rotor, we do have one 5 millimeter hex head fastener. And then we can see if that rotor will come off. We'll then shift our focus back to our caliper. Specifically, we want to reset the caliper piston by pushing that in. But when we do this, we will have the bleed screw open so we do not push dirty brake fluid back through the system. My initial research indicated that I would need a screw type caliper retraction tool. That is not the case. You can do this with a C-clamp or any other type of piston reset tool. However, since I purchased this tool, let's go ahead and use it. This is a pneumatically actuated tool that does allow you to screw that in if this was that type of piston. And with that compression tool in place, I can remove my dust boot and loosen the bleed screw. And I probably should have used my brain before squeezing the trigger. And if I had been smarter, I would have directed that bleed screw down or connected a piece of tubing to it so it didn't spray all over the side of the wheel well. So we will use some brake and parts cleaner to clean that off. And we do want to close that bleed screw for now. And at this point, we're going to clean our assembly with Amsoil brake and parts cleaner and a wire brush. We're never going to get this perfect, but we do want to work off any large amounts of rust or corrosion. And when that dries, I do like to coat the entire assembly with Amsoil heavy duty metal protector. This will help prevent rust and corrosion down the road and make sure those parts aren't sticking together. We will be prepping our brake caliper next. This begins with removing our hardware. In total, there are 4 pieces of hardware. And we'll remove our slide pins next. This one does not have a bushing on it. This one does have a bushing on it. And we'll do a little bit of cleanup on both of those slide pins, making sure we don't mix them up with which side they were on. And to clean these up, I am using Amsoil brake and parts cleaner. This kit did come with new boots. My boots are still in very good condition. If I did want to remove those, I could pull those out, replace them with the new ones, and they fit back on there. And this kit also came with new bushings for the pins, but again, there are no issues with my pins. I do want to apply some Permatex Ultra Brake Parts lubricant to both the boot and the pins. Then I'm going to work out any air that might have got caught. And the same for the other side. I'm also going to clean the point where my hardware sits on both sides. And you are wanting to work off any rust and corrosion. And then ready for my hardware. And we want to install these so that the portion where our rotor sits is open. And if I mock this up with a brake pad, I'm going to apply a little bit of grease where those ears of the brake pad will slide on the hardware. And I'm also going to pick out the correct brake pad with the corresponding wear indicator, and our outside brake pad should be the same. For reassembly, we will start by cleaning our new rotor. And because these are drilled and slotted, we do want to verify that the rear passenger side is on the rear passenger side portion of the vehicle. We can then install that 5mm hex head fastener, starting it by hand first. And then comes our mounting bracket with two 17mm bolts, again starting these by hand. Now the research I did on this said that this bolt is torqued to 80 to 81 foot-pounds. My personal opinion is that that number is way too tight. I did this to 60 and I even felt like that might have been too tight, where I almost felt like I was starting to strip out the threads inside of there. And our new pads can go on next, making sure that the pad with the wear indicator goes on the inside. I'm also going to add a small amount of brake parts lubricant to the piston face, as well as the two wings on the caliper. We can then slide that caliper over our brake pads and install the two caliper bolts by hand. And these will be torqued to 26 foot-pounds. These are 13mm fasteners. And at this point we will want to bleed our brakes as we did open this system. I will be using a brake bleed tool, but you could do this manually. And during this bleed procedure, you will want to locate the brake fluid reservoir and make sure you keep it topped off with fluid. We do not want this to run empty. For this, we are using Amsoil .3 and 4 brake fluid. And you do want to keep that capped, as brake fluid will absorb moisture. And then replace that dust boot. And we'll give it one last cleaning in case we touched anything before reinstalling the wheel. This service will need to be done on both sides. The driver's side is identical to the passenger side. And with both sides done, I am first going to set the piston by stepping on the brake pedal a couple times. I'm then going to follow the directions from the previous message when we put this system into brake service. We'll press the start-stop button to turn on our display. To reset it, we're going to press the brake pedal and hold it, and then activate the parking brake switch. And we will get a message on our display saying that the parking brake was reset, and this does take about 5 seconds to reset this. And we can press that start-stop button to turn it off. Then when I first take it for a test drive, I do like to tap the brakes a few times just to make sure everything works properly and sounds fine. And everything looks and sounds fine, so this repair is complete.